the south, the biplane came winging back toward the camp, a black speck against the dazzling white of the vast ice fields that extended unbroken to the horizon on every side. It came out of the south, and yet 100 miles further back, along the course on which it flew, it could not have proceeded in any direction except northward. 400 miles south lay the South Pole, the goal toward which the Travers expeditions had been pressing for the better part of that year. Not that they could not have reached it sooner. As a matter of fact, the pole had been crossed and recrossed according to the estimate of Tommy Travers, aviator and nephew of the old millionaire, who stood very uncle to the expedition. But one of the things that was being sought was the exact site of the pole, not within a couple of miles or so, but within the fraction of an inch. It had something to do with Einstein and something to do with terrestrial magnetism and the variations of the south magnetic pole, and the reason, therefore, and something to do with parallaxes and the precession of the equinoxes and other things. This search for the pole's exact location. But all that was principally the fare of the astronomer of the party, Tommy Travers, who was now evidently on his way back, didn't give a whoop for Einstein or any of the rest of the stuff. He had been enjoying himself after his fashion during a year of frostbites and hard rations, and he was beginning to anticipate the delights of the return to Broadway. Captain Storm, in charge of the expedition, together with the 5 others of the advance camp, watched the plane maneuver up to the tents. She came down neatly on the smooth snow, skidded on her runners like an expert skater, and came to a stop almost immediately in front of the marquee. Tommy Travers leaped out of the enclosed cockpit, which, shut off by glass from the cabin, was something like the front seat of a limousine. "Well, Captain, we followed the break 400 miles, and there's no ground left, as you expected," he said. "But Jim Dodd and I picked up something, and Jim seems to have gone crazy." Through the windows of the cabin, Jim Dodd, the young archaeologist of the party, could be seen apparently wrestling with something that looked like a suit of armor. By the time Captain Storm, Jimmy, and the other members of the party had reached the cabin door, Dodd had got it open and flung himself out backward, still hugging what he had found and maneuvering so that he managed to fall on his back and sustain its weight. "Say, what's that?" gasped Storm. Even the least scientific-minded of the party gasped in amazement at what Dodd had. It resembled nothing so much as an enormous beetle. As a matter of fact, it was an insect, for it had the 3 sections that characterize this class, but it was merely the shell of one. Between 4 and 5 feet in height, when Dodd stood it on an end, it could now be seen to consist of the hard exterior substance of some huge, unknown coleopter. This substance, which was fully 3 inches thick over the thorax, looked as hard as plate armor. "What is it?" gasped Storm again. Tommy Travers made answer, for James Dodd was evidently incapable of speech, more from emotion than from the force with which he had landed backwards in the snow. "We found it at the pole, Captain," he said, "at least pretty near where the pole ought to be. We ran into a current of warm air or something. The snow had melted in places, and there were patches of bare rock. This thing was lying in a hollow among them. If I didn't see it before my eyes, I'd think you crazy, Tommy," said Storm with some asperity. "What is it, a crab?" "Crab be damned," shouted Jim Dodd, suddenly recovering his faculties. difference between an insect and a crustacean. This is a fossil beetle. Don't you see the distinguishing mark of the Calyptera, these two elytra, or wing covers, which meet in the median dorsal line? A beetle, but with the shell of a crustacean instead of mere chitin. That's what led you astray, I expect. God, what a tale we'll have to tell when we get back to New York. We'll drop everything else and spend years, if need be, looking for other specimens. Like fun you will, shouted Higby, the astronomer of the party. Let me tell you right here, Dodd, nobody outside the Museum of Natural History is going to care a damn about your old fossils. What we're going to do is march straight to the true pole and spend a year taking observations and parallaxes. If Einstein's brochure, in which he links up gravitation with magnetism, is correct. Fossil beetles, Jim Dodd burst out, ignoring the astronomer. That means that in the tertiary era, probably there existed forms of life in the Antarctic continent that have never been found elsewhere. Imagine a world in which an insect reached a size proportionate to the great saurians. Captain Storm, I'll wager poor Bram discovered this. That's why he stayed behind when the Greystoke expedition came within 100 miles of the pole. I'd wager he's left a cairn somewhere with full details inside it. We've got to find it. But Jim Dodd, suddenly realizing that the rest of the party could hardly be said to share his enthusiasm in any marked degree, broke off and looked sulky. You say you found this thing pretty nearly upon the site of the true pole? Captain Storm asked Tommy. Within 5 miles, I'd say, Captain. The fog was so bad that we couldn't get our directions very well. Well then, there's going to be no difficulty, answered Storm. If this fair weather lasts, we'll be at the pole in another week, and we'll start making our permanent camp. Plenty of opportunity for all you gentlemen. As for me, I'm merely a sailor, and I'm trying to be impartial. And please remember, gentlemen, that we're well into March now, and likely to have the first storms of autumn on us any day. So let's drop the argument and remember that we've got to pull together. Tommy Travers was the only skilled aviator of the expedition, which had brought 2 planes with it. It was a queer friendship that had sprung up between him and Jim Dodd. Tommy, the blasé ex-Harvard man, who was known along Broadway and had never been able to settle down, seemed as different as possible from the spectacled, scholarly Dodd, 10 years his senior, red-haired, irascible, and living, as Tommy put it, in the age of old red sandstone, instead of in the year 1930 AD. It was generally known, though the story had been officially denied, that there had been trouble in the Greystoke expedition of 3 years earlier. Captain Greystoke had taken the brilliant, erratic Bram of the Carnegie Archaeological Institute with him, and Bram's history was a long record of trouble. It was Bram who had exploded the fake Neolithic finds at Mineham, thereby earning the undying enmity of certain European savants, but brilliantly demolishing them when he smashed the so-called Mannheim stone pitcher, valued at $100,000, with a pocket axe, and caustically inquired whether Neolithic man used babbitt metal rivets to fasten on his jug handles. Bram's brilliant work in the investigation of the origin of the Negrito-Asiatic races had been awarded one of the Nobel Prizes, and Bram had declined it in an insulting letter because he disapproved of the year's prize for literature. He had been a storm center for years, embittered by long position when he joined the Greystoke expedition for the purpose of investigating the marine fauna of the Antarctic continent, and it was known that its presence had nearly brought the Greystoke expedition to the point of civil war. Rumor said he had been deliberately abandoned. His enemies hoped he had. The facts seemed to be, however, that in an outburst of temper he had walked out of the camp in a furious snowstorm and perished. For days his body had been sought in vain. Jimmy Dodd had run foul of Bram some years before, when Bram had published a criticism of one of Dodd's addresses dealing with fossil monotremes, or egg-laying mammals. In his inimitable way, Bram had suggested that the problem which came first, the egg or the chicken, was now to be linked up with the Darwinian theory and solved in the person of Dodd. Nevertheless, Jimmy Dodd entertained a devoted admiration for the memory of the dead scientist. He believed that Bram must have left records of inestimable importance in a cairn before he died. He wanted to find that cairn, and he knew what a number of Bram's enemies knew, that the dead scientist had been a morphine addict. He believed that he had wandered out into the snow under the influence of the drug. Dodd, who shared a tent with Tommy, had raved the greater part of the night about the find. Well, but see here, Jimmy, suppose that these beetles did inhabit the Antarctic continent a few million years ago. Why get excited? Tommy had asked. Excited, bellowed Dodd. It opens one of the biggest problems that science has to face. Why haven't they survived into historic times? Why didn't they cross into Australia like the possum by the land bridge that existed between the continent and South America? Beetles 5 feet in length and practically invulnerable. What killed them off? Why didn't they win the supremacy over man? Jimmy Dodd had muttered till he went to sleep, and he muttered worse in his dreams. Tommy was glad that Captain Storm had given them permission to return to the same spot next morning and look for further fossils, though his own interest in them was of the slightest. The dogs were being harnessed next morning when the two men hopped into the plane. The thermometer was unusually high for the season, for in the South Polar regions, the short summer is usually at an end by March. Tommy was sweating in his furs in a temperature well above the freezing point. The snow was crusted hard, the sky overcast with clouds, and a wind was blowing hard out of the south and increasing in velocity hourly. A bad day for starting, said Captain Storm. Looks like one of the autumn storms was blowing up. If I were you, I'd watch the weather, Tommy. Tommy glanced at Dodd, who was huddled in the rear cockpit, fuming at the delay, and grinned whimsically. I guess I can handle her, Captain, he answered. It's only an hour's flight to where he found the fossil. Just as you please, said Storm curtly. He knew that Tommy's judgment as a pilot could always be relied upon. You'll find us here when you return, he added. I've countermanded the order to march. I don't like the look of the weather at all. Tommy grinned again and pressed the starter. The engine caught and warmed up. One of the men kicked away the blocks of ice that had been placed under the skids to serve as chocks. The plane taxied over the crusted snow and took off into the south. The camp was situated in a hollow among the ice mountains that rose to a height of 2,000 or 3,000 feet all round. Tommy had not dreamed how strongly the gale was blowing until he was over the top of them. Then he realized that he was facing a tougher proposition than he had calculated on. The storm struck the biplane with full force. A snowstorm was driving up rapidly, blackening sky. The sun, which only appeared for a brief interval every day, was practically touching the horizon as it rose to make its minute arc in the sky. A star was visible through a rift in the clouds overhead, and the pale daylight in which they had started had already become twilight. Tommy was tempted to turn back, but it was only 100 miles, and Jimmy Dodd would have given him no peace if he did so. So he put the plane's nose resolutely into the wind, watching his speed indicator drop from 100 miles per hour to 80, 60, 40, less. The storm was speeding up furiously. Of a sudden, the clouds broke into a deluge of whirling snow. In a moment, the windshield was a frozen, opaque mass. Tommy opened it and peered out into the biting air. He could see nothing. The plane, caught in the fearful cross-currents that swirl about the southern roof of the world, was fluttering like a leaf in the wind. The altimeter was dropping dangerously. Tommy opened the throttle to the limit, zooming, and like a spurred horse, the biplane shot forward and upward. She touched 5,000, 6, 7, and that for her was ceiling. Under those conditions, for a sudden, tremendous shock of wind, coming in a fierce cross-current, swung her around, tossed her to and fro in the enveloping white cloud, and Tommy knew that he had the fight of his life upon his hands. The compasses, which required considerably daily adjusting to be of use so near to the pole, had now gone out of use altogether. The airspeed indicator had apparently gone west, for it was oscillating between 0 and 20. The turn and bank indicator was performing a kind of tango round the dial. Even the 8-day clock had ceased to function, but that might have been due to the fact that Tommy had neglected to wind it, and the oil pressure gauge presented a still more startling sight, for a glance showed that either there was a leak or else the oil had frozen. Tommy looked around at Dodd and pointed downward. Dodd responded with a vicious forward wave of his hand. Tommy shook his head, and Dodd started along the cabin, apparently with the intention of committing assault and battery upon him. Instead, the archaeologist collapsed upon the floor as the plane spun completely around under the impact of a blast that was like a giant slap. The plane was no longer controllable. True, she responded in some sort to the controls, but all Tommy was able to do was to keep her from going into a crazy side slip or nosedive as he fought with elements, and those elements were like a devil unchained. One moment he was dropping like a plummet, the next he was shooting up like a rocket as a vertical blast of air caught the plane and tossed her like a cork into the invisible heavens. Then she was revolving as if in a maelstrom, and by degrees this rotary movement began to predominate. Round and round went the plane in circles that gradually narrowed, and it was all Tommy could do to swing the stick so as to keep her from skidding or side-slipping. And as he worked desperately at his task, Tommy began to realize something that made him wonder if he was not dreaming. The snow was no longer snow, but rain, mist, rather warm mist, that had already cleared the windshield and covered it with tiny drops. And that white, opaque world into which he was looking was no longer snow, but fog, the densest fog that Tommy had ever encountered. Fog like white wool, drifting past him in fleecy flakes that looked as if they had solid substance. Warm fog that was like balm upon his frozen skin, but of a warmth that was impossible within few miles of the frozen pole. Then came a momentary break in it, and Tommy looked down and uttered a cry of fear. his ear. Do you think the South Pole lies over there? It's here. Yeah, don't you get it, Jimmy? Look down this valley. God, Jimmy, the South Pole's a hole in the ground. As he spoke, he remembered vaguely some great who had once insisted that the two poles were hollow because... What was the fellow's reasoning? Tommy could not remember it, but there was no longer any doubt but that they were dropping into a hole not more than a mile around, which explained why neither Scott nor Amundsen had found it when they approximated to the site of the pole, a hole, a wormhole, up which a current of warm air was rushing, forming the white mist that now gradually thinned as the plane descended. The plateau with its covering of eternal snows loomed in a white circle high overhead. Underneath was green grass now, grass and trees. The fog was nearly gone. The plane responded to the controls again. Tommy pushed the stick forward and came round in a tighter circle. And then something happened that he had not in the least expected. One moment he seemed to be traveling in a complete calm, a sort of clear funnel with a ring of swirling fog outside it. The next he was dropping into a void. There was no air resistance. There seemed hardly any air, for he felt a choking in his throat and a tearing at his lungs as he strove to breathe. He heard a strangled cry from Dodd and saw that he was clutching with both hands at his throat and his face was turning purple. The controls went limp in Tommy's hands. The plane, gyrating more slowly, suddenly nosed down, hung for a moment in that void, and then plunged toward the green earth 200 feet below with appalling swiftness. Tommy realized that a crash was inevitable. He threw his goggles up over his forehead, turned and waved to Dodd in an ironic farewell. He saw the earth rush up at him. Then came the shattering